Hello there, this is Andy Nicol again, the tutor for the Perfectly Spoken Advanced course. That's the C1 course. And in this lesson, this is lesson 8 of the C1 course, we're going to look at emphasis through inversion again. We looked at this in lesson 6 with fronting, changing the order of the sentence and so on, hardly or scarcely and so on. And in this lesson, we're going to look at some other ways that we can emphasize information. Okay, so the first one is, in general, we're going to be looking at cleft sentences. Okay, so we'll be beginning the sentence with it, using question words like what, where, when, or all, which is obviously not a question word. The person who, the place where, the reason why, and so on. And what happens is, or what happened was. So first of all, what is a cleft sentence? A cleft sentence emphasizes a specific part of a sentence. We can use certain words or phrases at the beginning, as I mentioned, it, what, where, when, all. As in the song title, What the World Needs Now is Love. I think by the Carpenters. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. So in this sentence, what the world needs now is love, emphasizes it's love that we need. Okay? So let's start with clefting with it. So the first one, the form is the word it, of course. Then the verb to be, this obviously changes with tense, is in the present was, is in the present, was in the past, and so on. The information that we need to emphasize, or we want to emphasize, and then that or who, in other words, a relative clause. So here's an example, a simple clause. Peter, the subject, gave her a ring. Okay, so here's a picture of Peter with the ring. And so what do we do when we cleft it? We divide this into two. First of all, we have the first half with it and the form of the verb to be, and then the second with who or that and the relative clause. Here's the example. I'm going to disappear so you can see it. It was Peter who gave her a ring. So Peter gave her a ring. To emphasize it, we use it plus the verb to be was, Peter who gave her a ring. And here we are, of course, emphasizing the subject of the sentence, which is Peter. Of course, we can emphasize other information, and here are some other examples. We can emphasize the direct object. In our first example again, Peter gave her a ring. Her is the direct object, the person who received the ring. So we could say it was her that Peter gave a ring to, as opposed to somebody else. We can also emphasize the indirect object, in this case the ring. So Peter gave her a ring. We want to emphasize this. We say it was a ring that Peter gave her, as opposed to a bunch of flowers, a book, or whatever. It was a ring. And we can also emphasize other information, for example, adverbials, time expressions, such as on Sunday. He gave her a ring on Sunday. To make this more, to emphasize on Sunday, we could say it was on Sunday that he gave her a ring. Okay, so one other thing that I think needs to be pointed out is the use of me or I. Okay, in formal English, we prefer to use the object pronoun me after it is or it was. So, for example, I phoned the ambulance. I phoned the ambulance. You want to emphasize the subject, which is I. So we'd say in an informal style, we would say it was me who phoned the ambulance. So in speaking, we would prefer to say this. It was me who phoned the ambulance. If you say it was I who phoned the ambulance, this is actually a very formal way of saying it. Okay, so we prefer to use it was me in an informal style. Okay, so we want to look now at some examples and see if you can work out how to cleft these sentences. Okay, so the first one, cleft the sentence below. You have a woman on the phone, and it's Maria phoned us on Saturday. Maria phoned us on Saturday. If we wanted to emphasize the subject, what is the subject in the sentence? Of course, the subject is Maria. So we would say it was Maria that phoned us on Saturday. Sticking with the same example, Maria phoned us on Saturday. If we wanted to emphasize the adverbial on Saturday, what would we say? Of course, we'd say it was on Saturday that Maria phoned us. Okay. Now, we can also use question words like what, where, when, and also the word all to emphasize. And here's a bit of explanation. Use cleft. We can also cleft using a question word like what or where. We can also use the word all in certain cases. Here are some examples. The world needs love now. What the world needs now is love, the song that I mentioned before. Another song, famous song by the Beatles, well, it's not called You Only Need Love. To make it more emphatic, all you need is love. All you need is love. So that's this a more emphatic version. Okay? So, some more examples. I'm not happy about the way he behaves would be, what I'm not happy about is the way he behaves. We just want a bit of peace and quiet. If you want to emphasize peace and quiet, all we want is a bit of peace and quiet. I only told him to stop shouting becomes all I did was tell him to stop shouting. When you have an action like stop shouting, to tell him, we have to use an auxiliary verb. So in this case, I told him is in the past, so we use the auxiliary did. All I did was tell him to stop shouting. You're emphasizing a verb. Okay. So here is another example for you. A young woman with her fingers in her ears, and the sentence is, the noise drove me crazy. The noise drove me crazy. Okay, so we want to emphasize the noise. This is the subject of the sentence. And it is what drove me crazy was the noise. What drove me crazy was the noise. Okay, next one. Got the doctor there, and the doctor's available on Friday afternoon. So to make this more emphatic, we'd say when the doctor's available is on Friday afternoon. Obviously it's a time, so we use when. When the doctor's available is on Friday afternoon. Here's another one. Okay, you've got a picture of a rather inviting beach holiday. And the sentence says, I really need a holiday. I've been working really hard. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I really need a holiday. Would be, what I really need is a holiday. One more here. And the man is giving a key to the young woman. And it says, you should give the keys to Denise. Okay. So we want to emphasize the person, Denise, who's the direct object. Who you should give the keys to is Denise. Who you should give the keys to is Denise. Okay, another structure that we can use is what happened is or what happened was. And we use this in the following situation to emphasize an event or sequence of events. So what happens is that, or what happened was that. That is optional. First you put on this protective suit and then change your shoes. This is an example. First you put on this protective suit and then you change the shoes. Well, this is in the present. So we say what happens is that you put on this protective suit and then change your shoes. We left a window open and someone burgled the house. Okay, here we're telling a story about what happened in the past. We left a window open and someone burgled the house. Burgle, of course, means to steal from a house. Specifically, what happened was that we left the window open and someone burgled the house. Obviously, as I say, you can drop that. So what happened was we left the window open and someone burgled the house. Okay, so here are some more examples for you to try to change to the cleft sentence to make them more, to emphasize a particular part. So you've got an application form there. So you fill in an application form and then you send it to the HR department. HR is human resources. So if you're applying for a job, normally you send an application to human resources. The people who decide whether or not to hire people. And so obviously this is in the present. It's giving you instructions essentially. So what happens is that you fill in an application form and then send it to the HR department. Got another one here. It's a little hamster escaping from a cage. So the situation is we left the hamster's cage open and it escaped. Oh dear. We left the hamster's cage open and it escaped. So if we want to emphasize this, we could say what happened was that we left the hamster's cage open and it escaped. Another way we can emphasize is to use structures such as the person who, the place where, the reason why, etc. The last time is another possibility. So, person who, the place where, the first or last time, the reason why, etc. I booked his brother to play at our wedding becomes the person who I booked to play at our wedding was his brother, if we are focusing here on the direct object. We got married in the local church. We want to emphasize the church. The place where we got married was our local church, and so on. So we have this rather attractive looking restaurant here, and the sentence is, we're going to have lunch at that trendy new restaurant. So if we want to focus on the venue, the restaurant, the place we're going to have lunch is that trendy new restaurant. Another example. Last saw your mum over a week ago. Then we can say the last time we saw your mum was over a week ago. The last time we saw your mum was over a week ago. So here we've got the beautiful Sistine Chapel in Rome. They went to Rome to see the Sistine Chapel. So this has answered the question, why did they go to Rome? They went to Rome to see the Sistine Chapel. That's what we call the infinitive of purpose. We use it to see. I went to the supermarket to buy some bread. It's an infinitive, expresses a purpose. So out of these structures, what would be most appropriate would be the reason why they went to Rome was to see the Sistine Chapel. Okay, you've got some workmates, some colleagues here, and the sentence says, I like James best out of all my colleagues. I like James best out of all my colleagues. And this becomes, the person who I like best out of all my colleagues is James. Okay, so now we're going to look at some options, and you choose the best word in each sentence. So the first one, all what I hate about her is that she always thinks she's right. So what would be the best option? All, what, or it? Pause the video if you need time to think here. And the best option would be what I hate about her, the thing that I hate about her, what I hate about her, she always thinks she's right. Number two, that happened was that I left my wallet on the table at home. The structure is, what happened was that I left my wallet on the table at home. What happened was, and then an explanation. Number three, when it was last Saturday when he proposed to her. He proposed to her last Saturday. It was last Saturday when he proposed to her. The next one. It, what, or who was Denise who won the singing competition, not Elizabeth. Again, it was Denise who won the singing competition, not Elizabeth. It, that, or what I'm dying for is a nice cup of tea and a biscuit. What's the thing that I'm dying for is what. What I'm dying for is a nice cup of tea and a biscuit. So here's some more examples. The next one is the person, place, or reason who I spoke to was the bartender. The person, place, or reason. And the answer is the person who I spoke to was the bartender. Next one. The place, what, where, or why we stayed was in a log cabin in the forest. The place where we stayed. Next one. The last time or the last place I saw your father was over 20 years ago. The last time. Next one. It was me, I, or mine who called the emergency services about the fire. Remember, in an informal style, we use it was me who called the emergency services about the fire. And lastly, what happened is, was, were that I arrived home and I realized I'd left my bag on the bus. What happened, the thing that happened, we use a singular verb, and of course it's in the past, so was that I arrived home. Okay. So that's it for this lesson. There will be an accompanying little test to go with this to practice to see if you've understood it and you're able to use it. In the next lesson, we're going to be looking at, this is lesson 9, we're going to be looking at abstract nouns. Abstract nouns such as freedom, happiness, etc. So we're looking at suffixes. Freedom, dom, is a typical abstract noun ending. Ness, enjoyment, ment, and so on. We're looking at pronunciation of stressed syllables. We're looking at collocation, how these abstract nouns combine with other words. And that's all for now. So hopefully you can join us and tune in to the next broadcast on abstract nouns. I look forward to seeing you then, and I hope you found this lesson useful. Bye-bye for now.